Now, Pope Francis says that he's very saddened by the Turkish government's decision to convert the Hagia Sophia Orthodox Church from a museum back into a mosque. Pope Francis stood in silence for several minutes at his weekly Angelus prayer on Sunday after he talked about the decision. Since a cabinet decree in 1934, the iconic building in Istanbul has served as a museum. But on Friday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan issued a presidential decree to transfer the management of the building from the Ministry of Culture to the Presidency of Religious Affairs. Well, for more insights onto what this move means, particularly to the Christian community and the world at large, I'm now joined by Dr. Motshekga, who himself, although he's a lawyer, he's a great historian as well, who understands these cultural issues, and he's from the Kara Heritage Institute. Thanks so much indeed, Dr. Motshekga, for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Good evening to you, Peter, and to the listeners.
All right, so the Hagia Sophia, built in 537, a lot of people very hurt and upset by the decision that Turkey has made. Give us a little bit of history of why they would be so upset and why this church is looked upon with such reverence.
The people who must be most hurt are the African people, because the origins of that monument is Africa. The word Sophia is a Greek corruption of the African word Saba, which is also called Sheba, because the most ancient religion in the world was Sabaism. So Sophia means wisdom. This is the wisdom out of which all reality originated. But now, this Sophia is also the Black Madonna, which was personified by Queen Isis in ancient Nubia or Ethiopia, which was taken into Europe, transformed by the Christians. Now the Muslims want to change that corrupted religion from Africa and make it a Muslim religion. So this is a continuation of the falsification of ancient wisdom. And the positive or silver lining of all this is that the Christians, the Muslims, and the Africans, we must go back to Ethiopia, Nubia, which is the heartland of Africa, and say, what is the origin of ancient wisdom? What is the origins of religion? We'll find that both Christianity and Muslim religions originated from Africa, and they were transformed many times. Now, the UNESCO, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Muslims are going to fight over something that does not belong to both of them. So it is the time to go to the roots, to the drawing board, and say, where did these ideas originate? And that will help promote an interfaith alternative. That will help unite humanity and stop all this fighting, because the
Hello, Dr. Motshekga, are you still there? Hello, Dr. Motshekga. All right, it looks like we may have lost him there. But just to give you a bit more history, this church was built by Emperor Justinian in 537, and at one time was the largest, actually grandest church of all of Christendom, and remained the spiritual home of the Orthodox Christian Church in Turkey. And then, of course, it was converted into a mosque in 1453. So that's almost 1,000 years later. It was converted into a mosque when the Ottomans conquered Istanbul. And so in 1934, a decree was made that given the history of the church itself, having both Christian and Muslim history, it was turned into a museum. And so now, since 1934, it's been this museum, almost reflecting its rich history of many cultures and religions. But now President Erdoğan has decided this is going to be a mosque again. He says that the symbols inside the church will remain so that everybody is welcome. But UNESCO is not happy, the Pope is not happy, people from around the world very concerned about this latest move. We've managed to reconnect with Dr. Motshekga, and we're talking about the Hagia Sophia. The Turkish president has decided that this church will now go back to being a mosque, and the Orthodox Christians upset, and a number of people, including UNESCO, very concerned because it is a World Heritage Site. So, Dr. Motshekga, thanks for coming back on the line. So before the break, you were telling us about the stolen wisdom and the misrepresented heritage that should be ascribed to Africans when we talk about symbols such as the Hagia Sophia. Be that as it may, it was built in 537, and for a long time it was a symbol of the Orthodox Christian Church. Then it became a mosque, and the Muslim Church took it over. Perhaps then the museum was the best way to appease both?
I think appeasement on falsehood is also not helpful. You know, at the moment we have problems of femicide and gender-based violence because the feminine, the goddess idea, has been suppressed. Sophia refers to wisdom, and this wisdom in the original African language is Saba.
Dr. Motshekga?
So maybe this conflict gives us an opportunity to say what is the historical background of Sophia, because the Christians would say it is paganism, and the Muslims as well would say it's paganism. Why do they want, the Muslims want to build a mosque on a pagan monument? And why are the Christians defending a church built on a pagan monument? Now, I think as humanity, we should be working towards peace by seeking the underlying truth. There is no underlying truth in the Orthodox Christian monument of Hagia Sophia, and there will be no legitimacy in converting Hagia Sophia into a mosque, because both of them are based on paganism for which people were enslaved, colonized, and brutalized. Maybe this is an opportunity for the Muslims, the Christians, the Africans who believed in Karaism or Sabaism to come together and say, as humanity, we are fighting over things because of ignorance. Let's seek the true knowledge.
All right, so the fact is we do have this great architectural building that's there. Could a solution then be that it remains a museum and then add the true stories that you're reflecting now to be part of the history of that museum?
But you see, also when it is a museum, it would be a museum based on falsehood, because the original meaning, which is Sabaism, is not captured. It's like when you have the obelisk at the Vatican, you have the obelisk in Washington, in France, in America, and these obelisks were monuments taken from Egypt. The Vatican, the Americans, the French don't understand the meaning of the obelisk. So even if when they call it an obelisk, the Africans called it a benu, and it had a spiritual meaning. So the underlying African spirituality has been submerged, and that's why George Floyd was killed, because the West and the East are not willing to unearth the truth about where humanity comes from and the contributions of Africans to civilization. So that solution of a museum it will just be a cover-up. I argue that let's begin to go back and say, what's the origins of the name Sophia? It's not a Greek word, it is an African word. Sophia is the goddess that created. So Hagia Sophia is a pagan or an African goddess that was suppressed by the Christians. Now it was suppressed by the museum. Now it is going to be suppressed by the mosque.
All right, so what do we do with this building that's nearly 1,500 years old?
The building is made by human hands, but buildings can be the source of conflict. And as humanity now, we must seek peace. We must create peace. But if we don't find out the fundamental truth, we are going to have a global conflict, the Christian West fighting with the Muslim East over something that both of them don't deserve, something that is not theirs. So I am saying, let's forget about that, the fact that the building is 1,500 years, and say, what is the underlying truth? If we find the underlying truth, we will find an accommodation of the Muslims, the Christians, including the Africans, who are the original authors of Sophia Hagia.
This will be very difficult, though, realistically. We've got bodies like UNESCO noting it as a World Heritage Site. And when we have people of the ilk of the Pope saddened by what's happened, it seems that this African story will be difficult to get a hearing.
If the African story is difficult, we will have more George Floyds, we'll have more Africans killed. By not accepting anything as difficult, because the human brain is infinite. The human brain can find solutions to any problems. That's why now we are looking for solutions for COVID-19. So we cannot limit the infinite capacity of our brains, because there is enough evidence. The Pope knows exactly how African religion was falsified, how Christianity was falsified, because Christianity comes from Nubia, comes from Ethiopia, through Egypt, and it has been transformed many times. Muslim religion, Islam, was created by Bilal, an Ethiopian, who taught Muhammad. And all these things, there is enough evidence, but they require the willingness on the part of the Europeans and the Muslims to sit down with the Africans and say, what are the roots of these ideas? Because we cannot afford to perpetuate conflict for fear of going back to the roots.
What do you see as the immediate consequences then in the coming months, perhaps coming years, if President Erdoğan does not retract from this? You said, yes, we will see more black lives being lost, but this conflict between Christian and Muslim, is that likely to escalate?
It will escalate like there was a Cold War. We had capitalism against communism, and now, luckily, the collapse of the Soviet Union helped us to avoid a conflict. But if this thing continues, the West may gang up against the Arab world, and the Arab world will gang up against the West, and then we are going to have another world war, which is unnecessary if we go back to the roots.
And do you fear for the Christians that are still in Turkey?
That's why South Africa has come up with the interfaith alternative. Interfaith means that you look for the common origins of all religions, and even if you don't collapse them into one religion, then these religions can coexist. For instance, in Egypt, most of the mosques in Egypt were Christian churches which were converted into mosques. And those Christian churches in Egypt were actually the sun temples which were converted into the Christian churches. You can see that this falsification and transformation have been going on for too long, and the victims are always African people who are the authors of the original ideas, and no one respects them. And that's why, for instance, Hagia Sophia was a black Madonna. The statues which were worshipped in Europe were black statues, but later they have been whitewashed. You have a white Madonna where you had a black Madonna. So it means that the time has come for humanity to leave the lies aside and really say there's much that unites us than which divides us.
Okay. Dr. Motshekga, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thanks so much indeed for joining us and giving us this rich history. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter.